who still buy into this stuff. So, creation science there, ignoring reality for more than 200 years. When I began, I threw that one in for the kids. Just a bit of Lego there. In fact, we'll keep going on the Lego trend because I don't know if have you ever heard of the brick testament? Somebody with far too much time on their hands went through the whole of it's all on the internet. I went through the whole of the Bible. This is the creation of Adam. There's God there, and Adam emerging from a cloud of, and that's the Garden of Eden. The naked Lego man. But no, the brick testament. Somebody with too much free time on their hands has recreated the whole of the Bible. The whole of the Bible. In little Lego story strips. So you can go and have a look at it. It's amazing. Thankfully, on my travels, there is... That is what Darwin would look like in Lego form. So just so you know. He does have a presence there, but not on the brick testament, it has to be said. Anyway, let's... There we go. The problem with this whole creationist idea is, it does not take in Earth's history. That whole point of view, the Earth and everything and human history all came into existence effectively at the same time. That's the idea. So human history and the start of the Earth, all a very, very short time span. And this was always a problem, this idea of divine intervention. Even by the end of the 18th century, fossils were known, and I'm just going to give you a few examples. Fossils were known and understood. They just weren't really, people didn't pay a huge amount of attention to them. This guy here, Konrad Gessner, he's a Swiss scientist. Very interesting if you ever read his life story. He's very much a Renaissance type scientist and got into everything. Big people who are into mountaineering, he's a bit of a hero to them, and he made it his mission in life to climb a mountain every year of his life, a different mountain on the Earth. He published in 1565 pictures of fossils. So these are some of the earliest illustrations that are known of fossils. And he commented on the classification system, which was a bit weird. Not based on, this looks like a coral, this looks like a shell or whatever. He had divisions such as objects which have obviously fallen from the sky, things which are thunderbolts, things which look like stones but aren't, and so forth. So all different classifications. Later on, I'm going forwards. Later on, might want to just, if we could, pull that white thing out of the way. Yeah, I think it's just covering the, see the little white tail thing? Yeah, I think it's covering the little receiver for the remote. It might help. Lovely, lovely. I can see it there, yeah. Later on, this guy here, Nicholas Steno, a Dane. Nicholas Steno, again, Nicholas Steno, very, very famous as one of the founding fathers of some of the basic principles of geology. But he published this very famous image here. This is a dissected shark's head. And he realized that the teeth that was inside that head looked very, very similar to things which were turning up as fossils in rocks. And people have described them, they called them tongue stones because they believed that they were just sort of petrified tongues of humans. But he made the link and began to think, no, this is exactly the same as something on a living creature, but in rock form. This book here is well worth a read. It's called The Seashell on the Mountain Top, How Nicholas Steno Solved an Ancient Mystery and Created the Science of the Earth. Really, in that book there, it begins to tell you how geology as a science, how it had its birth and how it began to take hold. So, from the end of the 17th century pushing through, little arrow here coming through to the end of the 18th century, you had the idea that fossils were once living creatures. We don't know how they became stone. And then, by the end of the 18th century, we got to the concept that, yes, they were once living, but they were now extinct. And that was a huge leap of imagination, a huge leap, because if you believe in the biblical creation of the world, extinction is a bit of an anathema to your ideas, because it implies God made a mistake. When we push then from the 18th century into the 19th century, the main ethical problem for scientists was this idea of extinction, the idea of extinction of fossil species. And part of the problem for the extinction idea was that people didn't have a mechanism. So they had no mechanism to explain extinctions. Some people speculated that antediluvial animals destroyed by the flood and whatnot. Other people just decided not to believe it at all. This guy here, George Cuvier, was a major force in the idea of extinction of animals. He's a very, very famous and very eminent anatomist, zoologist, bit of everything really. Cuvier worked on elephants, living elephants, and showed that African and Asian elephants were separate. At the time he was working, fossils were beginning to turn up from Siberia. This is a skeleton of a mammoth from Siberia. And he looked at those and began to realize that these are quite different. What's living today is really quite different to these mammoths and mastodons. So this is one of his illustrations from his book, and this is the jaw. So these are the teeth, these sort of molar teeth of this one here is an Indian elephant, and this one here is a mammoth. And even though they look very, very similar, there are distinct differences there. So clearly all of these were elephants. Some were living, but here you had evidence for species which were not still alive, so extinct for sure. Between Cuvier and this chap here, William Smith was an Englishman, Frenchman, Englishman. These two, between them, sort of independently, were the first to suggest that successive rock layers each contain a distinct fossil assemblage. So as you build up the layers of rock through time, you'll have some fossils, older fossils that will characterize this layer, and as you get younger and younger and younger, you get progressively younger and younger fossils. That was a major leap in intuition as well. Once people started to do that, it allowed them to make up a geological map and a geological timescale. Because you had to imagine that before you had this idea of, you know, these fossils here, when I pick them up, and we'll look at these at the end of the hour, these are, I know these are Ordovician, so for me as a geologist that implies a certain time period and whatnot. But that idea, that context just did not exist. The deep time, the idea of the true age of the earth did not exist. Once we had maps and a time scale, that gave us a basis, a timeline to then work on for the theory of evolution. This map here that you can see is the first geological map ever made. It was made in the early part of the 19th century, 1815. William Smith was the maker. And what you have here, you can see, it looks like England and Wales, and there's colours. And the colours represent the distribution of rock types of a particular time period. So it's as if you scraped away all the soil and we're just looking at the rock layers. So if you're on a bit of blue here in North Wales, you know that it's roughly the same as a bit of blue here in South Wales, so it's the same in age and time, beginning to link things in time. So the William King or William Smith story, I don't have time to go into it, but there is a book by Simon Winchester, The Map That Changed the World, which goes into the story behind how that map, the first geology map, was ever put together. And that is a very good read. It's a very easily readable book. So Cuvier, big name, went on to describe loads and loads of different fossil creatures. Some of them like a giant ground slopes. This giant ground slope from South America, Megatherium, and it's so big, this slope, it will be able to look in the window of a two-story house, you know, the upper windows, giant animals that just don't live anymore today. And he hypothesized something along the lines of flood events. He used the term revolutions. So there were these gigantic catastrophic flood events, unlike anything seen today, that was responsible for killing these animals. And afterwards, more complex animals appeared to replace what had gone extinct. That was the idea. Cuvier's ideas actually proved to be popular because there was an idea at that time in the early 19th century that the Earth was actually cooling slowly and on its way to just becoming a dead planet. And this idea of events, very large, devastating events in the past that you can't see evidence for today, that led itself to a sort of a school of thought called Catastrophism, in trying to explain the history of Earth. And Cuvier was one of the ones that was really at the forefront of catastrophic theory. If we change tact, I just want to highlight this person here, Charles Lyell. And Charles Lyell is another one who's intricately bound in with the development of early geology. And Lyell published three books, Principles of Geology, between 1830 and 1833. And I've got a copy of the second edition here, which was, I think it was published in 1831. And with this book, Lyell promoted the idea of a concept called Uniformitarianism. And we still use that idea today in geology. With Uniformitarianism, you have the idea that the processes that you see happening today, the way rivers flow and the way tides operate and cliffs erode, all of that was happening as well in the past. So this idea that the present is the key to the past. And these books here, his Principles of Geology, really lay that out. And what is significant is that these books had a huge influence on Darwin himself. And he took the first edition with him when he left on the Beagle, and the second edition was delivered to him when he was on the Beagle, and he devoured the books. It really helped him explain what he was seeing in South America and beyond. So I'll pass that one around. So you have these two ideas of uniformitarianism and catastrophism, and those two ideas still resonate today. They haven't gone away. You think about, you know, regular stuff like rivers flowing and the like, and you look to see those deposits in the past. But equally, catastrophism has had a huge effect. Probably the best example I can give you is if you ask anybody about the extinction of the dinosaurs, invariably they'll talk about some sort of impact from space. Yeah, that's